US President Donald Trump says he's terminating trade talks with Canada over an ad featuring the words of former US President Ronald Reagan. Ontario's provincial government released the ad with audio from Reagan's 1987 speech, where he said tariffs hurt American workers and consumers and triggered fierce trade wars. In a social media post, President Trump called the ad fake and announced the end of negotiations. Paula Newton is back with us this hour. And Paula, we were just hearing from Mark Carney before we boarded a plane to Asia a short time ago. Tell us what we heard.
Well, what we heard is that a lot of this is not in Canada's control. It is a sobering message, not just for Canadians, but for others trying to get a good trade deal with the United States, or making sure that any agreement that is signed is not changed via social media post. We did hear from the Prime Minister in the last hour as he was leaving for a crucial summit in Asia. Donald Trump will be there as well. I want you to listen now to Prime Minister Mark Carney just moments ago.
For months, we have stressed the importance of distinguishing things we can control and things we can't control. We can't control the trade policy of the United States. We recognize that that policy has fundamentally changed from the policy in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. And it's a situation where the United States has tariffs against every one of their trading partners to different degrees. And it's in that context that our officials, my colleagues, have been working with their American colleagues on detailed, constructive negotiations, discussions on specific transactions, specific sectors, steel, aluminum, and energy. And a lot of progress has been made. And we stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries. Now, what we can control, absolutely, is how we build here at home, and that's the focus of Budget 2025, generational investment here in Canada. And what we can also control, or at least heavily influence, is developing new partnerships and opportunities, including with the economic giants of Asia, which is the focus of this trip.
So what Carney's getting at there is the here and now, right, Christina? A lot of talk about Ronald Reagan, and there's no doubt that that conservative icon using that in an ad really touched a nerve with President Trump. Having said that, this is 2025 and these trade negotiations are rough, and the United States is, to use the president's term, holding a lot of cards. Mark Carney will try to expand trade in Canada with his allies, with other nations, not the least of which are trading nations in Asia. But right now, they were supposed to sign in the next few days, we heard was going to be in the offing a deal on steel, just steel and aluminum. And this would have helped not just Canadian industry, but also American consumers. It seems now that that is off the table. I mean, Christina, look, the Prime Minister was very clear yesterday. He tried to raise the Prime Minister on the phone just to try and talk about a World Series bet. And even that didn't work out for him. He wasn't able to get that call in. So we will see if any communication happens on these long flights. We do expect the president within the hour to also leave on that Asia trip, and we'll see if he says anything more about trading with Canada.
And just to go back a bit, Paula, just to talk about the ad, the original sin, the ad. I mean, what prompted Ontario Province, Doug Ford, to do this? We know they've been particularly hit by tariffs, but just explain the background.
Well, especially the auto industry, right? I mean, the point is that the president and his cabinet have put extreme pressure on the big three automakers, Stellantis, Ford, and GM, to move production out of Canada and Mexico and back to the United States. Some of that has now taken place. And look, the president has made clear there will be no deal on cars. And yet Canada is striking back and saying, look, we buy hundreds of thousands of U.S. cars every year. It is right and proper that some of them, including the cars or the parts, should be made in Canada. That is what is at issue right now. By invoking Ronald Reagan, who I have to tell you, Christina, unequivocally was a free trader, and he's the man who first initiated a free trade deal back in the 80s between Canada and the United States. I think Doug Ford, the premier, wanted to speak directly to conservatives in conservative states. They are spending millions of dollars on this ad. airing it during the World Series in the United States, but it touched a nerve with the president and it may have caused more harm than done any good. I will say one silver lining for Canada, Trump did not announce new tariffs against Canada, just that talks would be on hold. It will be up to Mark Carney now to see if he can repair this relationship in the coming days, if that's even possible through the end of this year.
Yeah, it's certainly ramped up the pressure for this trip, hasn't it? Paula, we appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to bring in Robin Farzad. He is a business journalist and host of the Full Disclosure podcast. Good to see you, Robin. I want to pick up with what we just heard from Prime Minister Mark Carney there, because he seemed pretty calm about this, but also part of his rise to office was talking about how the relationship between Canada and the United States needed to fundamentally change economically. What do you anticipate the impact of pausing trade talks between the U.S. and Canada will be?
Meanwhile, the United States plays Canada tonight in the first game of the World Series up in Canada. So I find that it's all an interesting backdrop.
A lot at stake.
Look, a lot at stake. And I am a Dodgers fan, in full disclosure, as you can see. But look, time was markets would freak out at something like this. You have, what, $770 billion of trade between the United States and Canada. But the fact that it's yawning this off today, right? 6 months after, what was it called? Liberation Day, Emancipation Day, tells you that everybody's just inured to kind of how fickle the president is. He just might wake up on the wrong side of the bed one morning and say, I'm shocked at this ad, and try to weaponize the Reagan library and try to feign this indignation. You have to imagine what a fully cogent Ronald Reagan would say about this trade war right now. He would, on balance, be really against it, but he took something slightly out of context from April 1987, and he's making it relevant in a 2025 trade war. So go figure.
Well, and when you talk about the difference between April, for example, and now, you're just showing the stock markets don't seem to be impacted by this announcement at all. Up, actually, the last time we checked a few minutes ago. But also, you know, when you talk about President Trump's relationship with Canada, when Carney first got in, there was a lot of tension. Then it seemed to kind of go to the back burner, still there, simmering. And now here we are back in this moment here where President Trump has this lever that he can sort of pull. I mean, is this just the relationship that countries have to get used to economically with this administration, knowing that if something is messed up diplomatically or if someone is offended, that this is a lever that could be pulled even if you're a trade ally?
Of course. And that is inherent to that transactionalism. You realize that if he's hurt by this or if he's fanned, you even saw it play in parallel with the closing of the Paramount CBS transaction. And, you know, yes, you might be interested in a donation to my presidential library or one of these things. And similarly, I imagine Carney and Ontario and all of them are going to say, this too shall pass when and if he comes out on another week and he senses that there's a trophy to be had and we can give him that trophy so he wins a rhetorical game in this. In the end, I don't think the market is freaking out that this massive trade balance is in any way going to be really jeopardized by the fact that he is shocked that Reagan was slightly misquoted. I mean, these are just the atmospherics of the Trump administration. You see it play in parallel with Mexico. You see it with Colombia. I mean, to think that we're in a trade war and a diplomatic war and this tiff with one of our closest allies in Latin America, the markets would historically have a huge freak out over this. Currencies would. But I think they've learned to yawn it off by and large. And I'm not sure that's so great.
Well, and, you know, we talk about sort of leverage and what impact it actually has. You know, the backdrop of this standoff is the president's week-long trip to Asia kicks off today. And America and Chinese officials are expected to meet in Malaysia over the next 3 days for their latest round of trade talks. What will you be looking for in those talks? And how do you view the U.S.'s sort of, we'll call it leveraged economic relationship with China, different than maybe it would be with, say, Canada, Mexico, or even Colombia?
Yeah, I tip my hat to this great piece in the Wall Street Journal today on how Xi, the premier of China, maybe potentially figured Trump out. Let him get some rhetorical victories, but pay attention to the big stakes. In their case, it's rare earths and rare earth magnets. And if you withhold that, Detroit is going to cry uncle, the semiconductor industry. I mean, that's something that the United States does not have autonomy in. And as much as you want to talk about building, U.S. rare earths capability, that's not going to come online anytime soon. So he can really, especially, you cited that inflation number earlier. If the car industry freaks out during a trade war and then suddenly there's another supply shock in the brakes, in the chips that go into these cars, in the various high-tech equipment that goes into washing machines and the others, China clearly has the advantage in that.
Robin Farzad, appreciate you as always. Good to see you. We'll make it in person next time.